folks? Welcome back to a post-game edition of Bullet Points. I'm your host today, Kevin Masseri, live from a new area for me here tonight. But I'm looking forward to doing it from here. I wanted to stand and do the show today to get up and stretch a little bit. But I'm here with Mike Bunt to go over a third straight UB victory. Trying to catch their legs here, playing a couple of good second halves down the stretch. At just in the right moment, right in the nick of time, Mike. We're here to celebrate once again a 74-68 victory against Ball State. Coming off of a 78-64 road win against Western and a home 99-88 home win against Bowling Green. Starting stacking victories. It's something that we needed to see this team do, and they're slowly creeping right back up to the 4 spot, Mike.
Yeah, they're doing what they need to do heading into the middle stretch of MAC play, and that's stacking wins. 3 in a row. We're not going to complain who they come against. The whole MAC as a whole is down this year, but you take the wins, especially on the road where it's not always easy getting victories in some of these arenas that are 20% full. So doesn't matter how it happened, take the win, and now 9-6 and 3-2 overall in MAC play.
Yeah, and we're keeping our eye on the other CBS Friday night game here with Kent and Akron both struggling to score. 34-31 Kent right now over Akron. Akron only has 31 points here 4 minutes into the second half, which is impressive. An Akron team that played well against Ohio, beat UB, and has played pretty decently here down the stretch as well, beating Ball State by 10. So they're about on par with UB right now. So that's a game we're kind of keeping an eye on over there. But Kent State never having 0 wins with a team that scores 70 points, still a ridiculous statistic to me, Mike. But we'll get into that when UB plays Kent here coming up shortly. As you look through this, the first thing I wanted to touch on was David Skogman, a guy, and this is what I wanted to say. This is why rankings matter. This is why recruiting sites matter. This is why we talk about this. Can you be a 3-star, a high recruit, and suck? Absolutely. No one's saying that that's not true. But this is why you stack the cupboard with the Ronaldo Segu's, the Janathan Williams, the David Skogmans of the world, because you start to see these dominant performances off of players who dominated in high school with good rankings. It's a pretty straight up model. Conversely, at some point, the 2-stars, the JUCO average players might not come through for you. Yes, and just the same thing where you might get at CJ Massenberg, etc. We all know that can happen. But look at what Ohio's been able to do with their recruiting. What UB now has shown that, like, hey, if a guy's a 3-star and he's shown a lot of promise, Skogman needed 2 years, a redshirt year and his freshman year, and now as a redshirt super freshman or a redshirt sophomore, depending on how you reclassify COVID. Mike, you're looking at a player right now that's a huge key cog down. We've been asking for it, Mike. We've been on this show saying, what's going to happen next year? We don't even know if they even have a score, let alone a team. So David Skogman fits right into that. And what have you been most impressed with so far out of his development here as a sophomore?
It's honestly taken 2.5 years because if you count non-con, really didn't have many great performances before MAC play got started. But I've been most impressed by his just ability to not only generate his own shots down low in the paint, but he's been rebounding very well as well. I mean, you're looking at a guy that really has the potential to be a double-double machine in the MAC. You look at his last 3 games, had 20 points, 15 rebounds against Bowling Green, 14 and 11 against Western Michigan, and now 16 and 11 against Ball State. Those are good numbers. And if you're already doing that right now as a third-year player who has 2 years of eligibility after this, you're going to be a pretty dominant force in the MAC. So I think that's a huge sign to be encouraged by for the Bulls, because up until now, basically we've been thinking it's really just Josh Mballa down low in the paint, but now they're showing they have another guy that can eat a lot of minutes and have productivity when Mballa isn't doing well, when he's in foul trouble or something just isn't clicking. So this is a huge thing for UB, and I think it's going to help them down the stretch run of this season.
And an underrated point we haven't brought up, Skogman does a great job of sticking with 3 fouls. He's done it so far this season. 4 times he's eaten 3 fouls and kept it there. So he is a guy that's been able to keep the fouls away It's something that we've seen this team struggle with, like why Perkins came off the bench and why we've seen other things happen. But he's been able to keep the fouls as a forward down for the most part. Had a couple of key turnovers today, but outside of that, like really started to show to get going there in that Akron game. He went for 9 and 4, not amazing, but started to show that he's able to score in this conference. And since then, Mike, that's averaging 17 points per game, 13 rebounds per game since that Akron game. And you factor that in, he's still been a 15 and 10 player roughly. That's pretty impressive. Outside of the Miami game where he didn't really play great, he's been really good in conference play, and you're kind of looking for that to carry over. He's been the fourth player you've been looking for. We've been talking about the big three. Every team has one. Even Ball State had a big three. But what makes teams great when you get the fourth and fifth scorers? And if Skogman now is proving himself to be the fourth scorer, that's a huge addition to a UB team that absolutely needed that, because we've seen Janathan shoot 3 for 12. We've seen Mbala disappear. We've had a great, so far, really great stretch by Segu. He's showing what he's been able to do. I think he's been pretty efficient every single night that he's been on the court. So that's been great to see. But we have seen Janathan disappear at times. We have seen Mbala disappear at times.
Well, look at today for Mbala. Mbala had 5 points on 1 of 4 shooting. Did have 8 rebounds, so it wasn't like it was a complete dud, but he just wasn't really a big part of the offensive game. And Skogman went in there and he took over. So this was a game where you needed Skogman to step up, and he did exactly that.
Yeah, and shout out to Maceo Jacks, 10 and 5, efficient shooting, 4 for 7. This is what we were hoping to see out of Maceo, the ability to continue to play efficient basketball, keeping his turnovers down, keeping his missed threes down. That was a really great note. Do have to say the 2 for 12 for Keyshawn Bruton is just killer. There were stretches that he just was hitting it off the brim. He was hitting it off the side of the backboard. He was creating fast breaks for them on missed shots, let alone turnovers. Did commit 3 fouls as well. A foul real late in the game to stop the game to have them shooting 2. Which was an unnecessary foul there. We need to see a little bit more from Bruton as the 5th scorer potentially, and then Jack sitting there as well. Probably, really more realistically, the 5th scorer after Skogman now. And I'd like to see, with Mbala getting back in the starting lineup, hopefully Bruton comes out. Limits 12 field goals is just 2 for 9 from 3 is just too many shots.
I think something with Bruton that's key too is you go back to his numbers at Coastal Carolina when he averaged 14.5 points a game. It's not like he had an insane shooting percentage there. He only shot 39.3% from the field. The difference was he shot 8 threes a game and would make 3 of them. He was a 37% three-point shooter. Right now, he's shooting about 5 a game, making 1.5, and really not – he's shooting 37.9% overall from the field. So it's one of those things where he – gets his points in volume by putting up a lot of shots. And at with his role, they kind of need him to be an efficient player. They can't afford to have him be a volume shooter because he just doesn't make a high enough percentage. And sometimes it takes him 5, 6, 7 shots to really find it. But at that point, you mix that with a couple turnovers and you're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot. They need him to increase that shooting percentage without putting 8 shots a game from deep. And that's a hard thing to do. Sometimes you can either play that role or you can't. He's a guy that needs starters minutes to get his value. And it's just a bad fit. He's going to score some points, but he's going to put up a lot of bad shots to get there.
Yeah, and he's going to lower that shooting 3-point percentage today, probably down to 27%. It's just going to be brutal to be able to get to those numbers when you're shooting 27 on the year. Career 1.4 turnovers guy to 1 assist. That's a bad ratio too from a guard. Like that's just not something you're looking for. You can't have half a turnover more than assists. That's his career number. So that's a difficult feat there for him as well. But you really, kind of wrap this game up here. We mentioned Segu when he went 14 with 7 assists and 6 boards. What an efficient performance from him. Made some key shots late. You also had Janathan have a fairly good game today, shooting 8 for 15, which is more what you're looking for with 20 points, 4 rebounds. You like to see a little bit more aggression there out of him on the rebounding front. There were stretches where Ball State was actually dominating rebounding. ended up ahead there. But definitely anything's better than the performance last game against WMU, with 3 for 14 shooting percentage, as we saw 3 for 22 against Canisius as well earlier this year from Janathan. So obviously that's good to see that 50% mark, get back toward that 50% mark, Mike. But, we've kind of talked about this in the bullet points room here as we're looking forward now after, UB's kind of fitting in nicely right now in the 4 or 5, 4 spot. Eastern's in the 4 spot now. They're not a good team. They lost to Ball State. That's a 2-1 team that's just kind of sitting there as of the moment. But as of right now, UB really should be in that top 4 with Ohio, Toledo, and Akron, and then UB. So those 4 were really kind of the semifinalists, most likely in Cleveland. How they match up, is yet to be determined. But it's kind of that 4-way battle for the most part, bearing an upset in the quarterfinals. I just don't see with the games on the line, any of those teams really being able to upset anybody. Kent can always surprise you, but that's a bad Kent State team for the most part, under 500. And then for UB, you're looking forward to the stretch right now before Toledo and Ohio and Akron. You're looking. I don't know if they're going to play that they already played, so they're showing still 2-1 against at Akron. That's obviously not going to exist. They've already moved that game up and played it, so I'm assuming a game fits in there. But you're having a Toledo Ohio stretch, and I believe an EMU game that has already been rescheduled, so that might be pushed up. But that's a pretty, right now EMU is one of the kind of the best of the rest. So you really have an Ohio, Toledo, and maybe an EMU stretch there, Mike. That's going to dictate where you finish in the standings. Coming up with a CMU game they should win here at Alumni Arena here in a couple of days, and then a Kent versus Kent at home next Friday.
Assuming CMU gets played.
Yeah.
Right now, CMU had their game tomorrow postponed against Ohio due to COVID issues on their team. So right now, it looks like the game will be played, but it's not a guarantee that the CMU game will be played against UB.
Yeah, I wonder if they move in a game there anyways. It might be because they rescheduled earlier this year, which games got rescheduled, EMU and NIU. So I'm wondering if one of those games would come in if needed. Both were road games, so that'd be interesting how that would work. But UB has a stretch right now, CMU and Kent, really not the Kent that we're used to. Still, Kent can be dangerous at times. Kent at home should be favoring UB, like I just mentioned. Kent does not win when a team scores 70. UB is the highest scoring team in the conference at this moment, scoring 82 per game, 14th in the nation. Those numbers don't really work for Kent unless they play a 60s game. So, Mike, that's what you got right now. 3 straight. Home against CMU should be a victory if played. Home against Kent should be a victory. 5-2 roaring into the stretch of Ohio Toledo. Is that kind of the thought?
I feel like that's the necessity right now if they want to even have a chance at really competing for a MAC regular season title. Right now, Ohio's off to a really good start, and they already defeated Akron and Kent. So you kind of have to beat Kent just to keep pace. I mean, you're already 2 games back in the loss column. So you lose to Kent, you might as well just throw away any chance because you only have one head-to-head matchup with OU. Obviously, 2 matchups against Toledo. But you look at the conference schedule like you just did, this is probably the most daunting stretch of the season. The only other tough stretch would maybe be at the way end heading into Cleveland when you play home versus Toledo and then on the road at Kent on March 4th, because maybe you have a more well-rounded Golden Flashes team at that point. But playing Ohio and Toledo back-to-back, we're going to learn a lot about this UB team and where they stand. Going into the year, everybody said this was the favorites in the league along with Ohio. But there's some unknowns with the Bobcats with who they were losing. Toledo, a lot of hype, but we really didn't know what to expect. It looks like we're basically seeing what we said before the year. We got 3 teams that we know what we're going to get, and then we're kind of grouping Akron in there based on early returns. And then the next 8, it's anybody's guess. So really any game is winnable this year for this UB squad. You don't look at a 3-4 game stretch where you're playing Akron, Kent, and other schools as an unstoppable challenge like you might in other years. So really, it's important that when UB plays Ohio and Toledo and Kent in this upcoming stretch, they're at least 5-2 heading into the Ohio-Toledo games, and that they at least manage to split those 2 games. Otherwise, you're probably looking at best a 2nd, 3rd place finish.
Yeah, 2nd or 3rd. And Toledo's kind of fool's gold right now. Ohio has some decent wins. We talked about Ohio a little bit offline and their metrics right now that are favor some 17th in the country in luck, kind of the reverse UB right now. UB still 314th in luck after tonight. UB moved down to 109, actually 6 spots from their 103 slot earlier today.
I do want to add one thing about Ohio. They're kind of the weird metric team. So like
Yes.
the Ken Palms and the Sagarins and all of them, they have Ohio as like a 100 to like 105 type team, like high 90s, low 100s.
Sure.
They reward them for their win over Belmont, but they have been just destroying them for their soft schedule overall. They've had a really weak schedule, somewhere like in the 240s, 250s overall, and they honestly didn't destroy those teams.
285 per game.
Yeah, so really weak non-conference schedule, although that wasn't their intention. They were hoping Marshall would be better. Obviously, went on the road against LSU and Kentucky and played okay against those schools. But there's other metrics that actually show Ohio as a top 50 team in the country. So there's something called a resume ranking and then a quality ranking. The resume ranking has Ohio as the 51st or 52nd best team in the country. Their quality ranking was like 102nd. So there's a huge disparity in the two. And then even ESPN had another metric that one of their rankings said that Ohio was a top 40 team in the country. So we know they're not at that level, but it's hard to judge a team like the Bobcats because they have a 13-2 record, which is a great record, but they've mostly beaten up on horrible teams. But when the few opportunities they've had to play very good teams, they've had leads in the second half, and then they also finished the Belmont game, and they're a top 30 net team. So it's hard to really evaluate because you don't have a big enough sample size against quality competition. They're probably going to go the entire season without quality competition. So you might see a 24-6 type record with a net ranking of 80 at the end of the year. So at this point, kind of tough to evaluate them with the way everything is lined up.
Yeah, and one more thing I wanted to know: Ohio is tough to judge at this point. I think they'll become crystal clear here in the next couple weeks. Is actually even worse to a worse extent is Toledo, who actually still, they're a tough team to rank as well. If you look at them, they're 12-4, but they beat nobody. Really nobody. They beat the same Marshall team. They don't really have a key win. Maybe Tulane. They don't really. I mean, they lost to Oakland. They lost their one game to double digit to Michigan State. Lost to Richmond. They lost on the road to a poor Kent team. Their MAC wins right now are WMU, NIU, CMU. I mean, it's not looking good right now from Toledo. So they're doing what they need to do, which is a tick better than UB has done so far. However, it is to be noted that Toledo team, even to a more or like a higher extent than Ohio, could be fool's gold there, as they've always shown, Mike. They have made it to a couple MAC championships, but they've always shown their true colors at some point in the season. And
they haven't made the turn in forever. I mean,
them in Bowling Green. Yeah. They don't.
Them and Bowling Green have just been snake bitten. Like they have good teams. They just don't take advantage of those good teams. This league really, the last decade plus, you're basically talking UB, Akron, Ohio. Those are the three schools. You can say Kent, but they've only made the tournament once in, I think, 15 years under Senderoff or something like that, 12 years, 13 years, whatever it is. So Kent hasn't done anything since Jim Christian was still their head coach. So this is a 3-team league, and Toledo, we'll talk about them, but they really have to prove it in March before you really take them seriously. Even in their great seasons, they come up short. So
yeah, for sure. And that's kind of where we're at. We're going to have to monitor this Rockets team, who, in my opinion, is fool's gold. They have an at Bowling Green, which isn't the world's hardest game, but hard enough, versus Ball, a team that, can play a little bit, as we saw today, a young, feisty team. At Ohio versus Buffalo versus Akron, back to Ball versus Ohio. So they have a stretch here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 game stretch, 8 game stretch, excuse me. That's going to dictate. I think they go 4-4 in that and completely, go down to the middle of the pack to where they are.
You want to hear Ken Palm quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So looking at UB, Ken Palm has UB going 19-9 overall and 13-5 in MAC play because they probably don't account for some of the games that need to be rescheduled. The two losses that Ken Palm has UB suffering are Toledo on the road, January 25th, by 4 points, and then they have them losing to Miami, Ohio on the road, 81-80. Ken, if you're looking at Ken Palm, they're basically saying UB could win out. The Ohio game, they give UB a 60% chance of winning, and they predict it as a 3-point win for Buffalo. So you look at it, it's all there. We said this before the year. I mean, I made the crazy 24-7 prediction, and it looks laughable, but you look at them right now. They're 9-6. If they play a whole year, they go on some type of crazy run, they could still do something like a 22-7, depending on if they play 29, 30, 31 games. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID, but it's still there to win 20 games.
Yeah, it's probably right around that border right now after the Canisius, Miami, Akron 3-game losing streak. After coming off of that Western Kentucky St. John Fisher, really only having a couple of losses there, it was looking more likely. But three postponements: UCI, EMU, NIU, and then 3 losses kind of really put a damper in the 20-win thing for now. But there is hope that they're going to at least be. There's definitely going to be at least a battle for 2. I really believe that. I really don't think that that's far-fetched for it to be Ohio Buffalo.
Kev, you look at February 5th to February 26th, that period of 3 weeks. Outside of, I mean, the 2 highest games they play are Bowling Green and Miami, which is 163 and 134. In that stretch, you're going to play 342, 261, 255, 331, 311. Like, that's the MAC this year. Normally in the MAC, you're talking about teams that the bad teams, you might have one team that's like 305 and another team 270. The bad teams aren't just bad, they're really bad. So it's there to stack wins, and that's all UB should be focused on right now. Don't worry about the metrics. Don't worry about what seed you're going to be, because at that point is long gone. Just stack wins, get the best MAC tourney seeds you can get. Try to avoid Ohio in the semis, and then see what happens if you can get to the finals.
Yeah, I mean, look, UB is just trying to be 2 or 3 right now because it's basically without home games. It's 2 and 3 are basically the same, especially with not a bottom-heavy league. Whether you play the 6 or the 7 isn't a huge deal. So right now you're trying to get to that 2-3 slot, be able to take out Toledo, like potentially you're able to do in the regular season, and then maybe have a rematch UB Ohio. Is kind of Toledo, Ohio, UB, Ohio. That's kind of what it's looking like. UB are, leaving Akron kind of in the 4, putting a pretty hard game on the Bobcats, that 1-4 game too. So, nothing's a given in this conference, especially I think it's a fair given to the semifinals, but nothing's a given to the conference finals at all. It could be any Toledo, Buffalo, Akron, Ohio, any mix of that. It really could. I wouldn't be shocked at any of them at pairs match up in the conference finals. That's where we're at, Mike. What a great 25-minute show here. Buffalo's focused on the Bills now, so we're going to get you back to your Bills coverage here tomorrow. Appreciate you tuning in for 25 minutes here to talk a little bit of UB with all the football content right now. This is a good show to be able to get in, Mike. But any last minute notes that you have for anybody?
No, just excited for where the season can go. I know sometimes we're a little hard on this team, and I think rightfully so. Early in the year, we were hard on them because we saw some issues, and I think those issues have come to the forefront at certain points of the season. But I think they're starting to correct some of those issues. Seeing David Skogman start to progress is a sign that they are developing some of their guys, and that there is some positives heading into the middle part of January. So I'm encouraged. I don't think this team is as good as what I thought at the beginning of the year, but I still think this team has a lot to play for, and hopefully going into February, when it matters the most, they'll be able to play their best basketball and make it fun in Cleveland, because that's what we all live for, Kev. We love Cleveland week. We were robbed of it the last 2 years due to not being able to really have much of a crowd last year, and then the year before getting eliminated and by Miami and having the tournament canceled. So I I love to be down there. I plan on being down there this year, and hopefully UB gives me a reason to be excited when that time comes.
In mid-March now, so everybody look out forward for the Cleveland. And like Maniac, Rob Ryan, a couple guys in Bullet Point say all the time, like they going focus on in late February and early March. And this year might be the mantra. Just get yourself in position that you don't really want to be in the 4, 5, 6 spot. Just get yourself into position in 1 through 3. Is it much different? Probably not a grave difference. If you're 1, 2, or 3, you still need to win. Put yourself in a good spot, and that's all UB can do now at this point with pretty much everything else out of it. Ohio, has a shot to have pretty good metrics, but other than that, like there's really no one else in here that's got more to play for than maybe making sure you're in that 2, 3 spot and putting yourself in position to make the MAC finals. And then I think all the 3, maybe 4, including Akron, are good enough to win on a 1-game series. So that's what UB's looking forward to doing. That's all that matters here as we start to approach January. UB starts to stack some wins, whether at this age, Mike, whether they're 15-3 based on how many games they're playing, or 13-5 or 12-6 doesn't overly matter anymore. But what does matter is you can't stack losses any longer. You can take a loss, you cannot stack losses. That's what we're looking for out of this UB's team. And that's what we'll be focusing on. If they do have a bad loss, they need to bounce back with stacked wins. So that's what the focus of Bullet Points will be on going forward. Fine with the loss on the road, but we need to see you come back and beat that during the stretch that you mentioned. They should go 7-0, but I need to see at least 5-2, 6-1. Like no doubt about it. To be 6-1, really, to be where you need to be. So from Bullet Points, we'll catch you on our next edition. Appreciate everybody tuning in, but good night now.